My sister pushed a breadbasket toward my son and said, "We didn't order for him," while her kids ate $100 steaks. My dad added, "You should have packed him something." I just smiled. When the waiter came back, I stood up and announced. My sister pushed a breadbasket toward my 7-year-old son at Morton's, the steakhouse in downtown Toronto, the kind of place where the cheapest entree costs more than I used to spend on groceries for a week, back when money was tight and every dollar had to stretch until it screamed. "We didn't order for him," Jessica said, her voice carrying that particular tone she'd perfected over the years, polite enough that a stranger wouldn't catch the cruelty, dismissive enough that I felt it like a slap. Her twins, Olivia and Ethan, both 10 years old and wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly car payment used to, were already cutting into steaks so big they hung off the edges of their plates. Wagyu beef, $120 per serving, according to the menu I'd memorized while we waited for our table. My dad, Richard Chen, 64, retired architect, sitting at the head of the table like he was still the patriarch whose word was law, added without looking up from his own ribeye, "You should have packed him something if you knew we were coming here, Marcus. It's a nice restaurant, not really a place for kids who aren't prepared. Like my son Caleb was the one who'd failed somehow. Like at 7 years old, he should have anticipated that his own family would invite him to dinner and then deliberately exclude him from ordering food. I just smiled, kept my face neutral, let the moment hang there while Caleb looked at me with those big brown eyes, his mother's eyes, the only thing he'd inherited from Sarah before she died 3 years ago from complications during what should have been a routine surgery, before I became a single father working 2 jobs and trying to figure out how to braid hair for school picture day. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered, putting my hand on his shoulder. His small frame was tense, holding back tears because he'd been so excited about this dinner, had talked about nothing else for 3 days after Jessica called to invite us. "Just wait, trust me." Caleb nodded, bit his lip, reached for a piece of bread with hands that trembled slightly. My heart cracked watching him try to act like this was fine, like being treated as an afterthought at a family dinner was normal. Jessica had always been the golden child, 3 years older than me, married to David Liu, who worked in investment banking, and whose yearly bonus was probably more than I'd earned in my entire 20s. They lived in a house in Oakville with 6 bedrooms and a 3-car garage. Their kids went to Upper Canada College, $35,000 per year tuition. Jessica drove a white Range Rover that cost more than most people's houses used to. She'd made a career out of looking successful, of posting Instagram photos with captions about blessed and grateful, while never acknowledging that her wealth came from marrying rich, not from any particular talent or effort of her own. I was the screw-up, the one who'd gotten Sarah pregnant in college, the one who'd dropped out to support his young family, the one who'd worked as a software developer by day and drove for Uber on weekends after Sarah died, because daycare cost $1,800 a month and rent was $2,200 and grief doesn't pay bills. The one whose son wore clothes from Old Navy while his cousins wore Burberry. But what they didn't know, what nobody in my family knew because I deliberately kept it secret for 3 months, was that one of those jobs had just paid off, real big. The software development wasn't just a 9-to-5 job. For the past 4 years, I'd been building an app on the side, nights after Caleb went to bed, weekends while he watched cartoons, a productivity platform for remote teams that I'd coded from scratch, tested with small businesses, refined based on feedback, built into something that actually solved real problems for real companies. 3 months ago, January 23rd, 2024, at 2:47 p.m., a date and time burned into my memory, I'd gotten a call from TechCorp Solutions. They wanted to acquire my app, wanted to integrate it into their enterprise platform, wanted to pay me $8 million. $8 million. I'd nearly dropped the phone. Had to sit down on my kitchen floor while they explained the terms, the timeline, the due diligence process. Had signed the papers 4 weeks later with hands that shook so badly the lawyer had to guide my signature. Had watched the wire transfer hit my bank account and immediately transferred most of it to investments and trusts and accounts that would ensure Caleb's future was secure no matter what happened. And I hadn't told anyone, not my father, not my sister, not even my best friend Mike, who'd been there through everything, because I wanted to see who my family really was when they thought I still had nothing, when they thought I was still the struggling single dad they could pity and patronize and occasionally invite to expensive dinners where they'd make sure I knew my place. Tonight was answering that question perfectly. "Should we order dessert?" Jessica asked her kids, her voice bright and cheerful, completely ignoring Caleb, who was slowly eating bread and trying not to look at the steaks everyone else was enjoying. "They have a chocolate lava cake here that's supposed to be amazing." "Yes!" Olivia and Ethan shouted in unison, already looking at the dessert menu the waiter had left on the table. My father nodded approvingly. "Good choice. Marcus, Marcus, you and Caleb can share something if you'd like. The portions are quite generous here. Translation: you can't afford your own desserts, so we'll let you split one if you ask nicely. The waiter appeared at our table, mid-20s, professional, carrying himself with that particular attentiveness that comes from working at a restaurant where tips regularly hit 3 figures. How is everything this evening? Can I get you anything else? I stood up. Everyone at the table looked at me. Jessica's fork paused halfway to her mouth. My father's eyebrows raised in that expression I'd seen 1,000 times, the one that said I was about to embarrass him. Actually, yes, I said, my voice calm and clear. I'd like to move to a different table, just me and my son. Complete silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy, suffocating. What? My father said, setting down his wine glass with slightly too much force. Marcus, don't be ridiculous. Sit down. You're making a scene. No, I don't think I will sit down. I looked at the waiter, who was professionally maintaining a neutral expression, but whose eyes showed he'd clearly noticed the dynamic at our table. Can we get a table by the window? The best one you have available? Of course, sir. Right this way. Jessica hissed at me across the table, her carefully maintained composure cracking. You're making a scene. Overbred? Seriously? You're going to throw a tantrum because not overbred, I interrupted, my voice still calm, but with an edge now that made her stop mid-sentence. Over respect. Over the fact that you invited my son to dinner and then deliberately didn't order food for him. Over the fact that you're sitting there eating $120 steaks while he eats bread and you think that's acceptable. Caleb grabbed my hand and stood up beside me, his little fingers squeezing mine tight. We'll get a table for 2, I told the waiter, loud enough that several nearby tables turned to look. And we'd like to see the premium menu. Whatever my son wants, he gets. No limits. Jessica rolled her eyes, that dismissive gesture she'd perfected in high school and never outgrown. Marcus, you can't afford the premium menu. Don't be stupid. Just sit down and stop embarrassing yourself. Can't I? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my new credit card, the black one. The Centurion card from American Express that had arrived in the mail 6 weeks ago after my private banker had suggested I apply, given my changed financial circumstances. My father's eyes narrowed as he recognized it. He'd had one himself for 20 years, had mentioned it approximately 900 times as evidence of his success and sophisticated taste. Is that, he started, a Centurion card? Yeah, came in the mail last month. Funny how that happens when you have serious money in the bank. The waiter's eyes widened. He knew exactly what that card meant. Knew it required $250,000 annual spending and came with benefits most people never saw. His entire demeanor shifted, posture straightening, voice taking on a more deferential tone. Right this way, Mr. Chen. We have a perfect table for you and your son. I'll have the premium menu brought over immediately. Wait, my father said, standing up now, his voice taking on that commanding tone he used when he wanted to assert control. Let's not be hasty here. There's no need to. Oh, now you want us to stay? I turned to face the whole table, letting them see the expression on my face that was no longer smiling, no longer accommodating. When you thought I was broke, my 7-year-old son could eat bread and watch his cousins enjoy steaks. But now that you see the card, now that you realize I have money, suddenly there's room at the table? Suddenly you're concerned? Jessica's face went red, that blotchy coloring she got when she was angry or embarrassed or both. That's not, we were just, you're twisting this. We assumed you'd want something simple for him. Kids don't need expensive. You assumed wrong. And you showed me exactly who you are when you think someone has nothing. Thanks for that. Really clarifying. I took Caleb's hand and followed the waiter across the restaurant to a window table with a perfect view of the Toronto skyline, the CN Tower lit up against the dark April sky. Behind us, I could hear my family's urgent whispers, could feel their eyes on my back, could sense the shift in power dynamics that had just occurred. Order anything you want, buddy, I said once we were seated, opening the premium menu in front of Caleb. The biggest steak they have, appetizers, dessert, whatever makes you happy. His face lit up in a way I hadn't seen since before Sarah died, that pure, unfiltered joy that kids have when something exceeds their wildest expectations. Really? Anything? Anything. This is your night. You deserve better than bread. The waiter returned with sparkling water in crystal glasses and an iPad showing the premium menu with full-color photos. For the young man, might I suggest our 40-ounce tomahawk ribeye? It's our signature cut, dry-aged for 45 days, served with... Yes, Caleb breathed, staring at the photo with wide eyes. Can I really get that? You can get 2 if you want, I said, smiling at his expression. But maybe start with one and see how you feel. And for you, sir? The waiter asked. Same. And let's start with the crab cake appetizers. The good ones, not the small plates. Excellent choices. And for drinks? Whatever juice he wants. I'll take a Macallan 25. The waiter nodded approvingly. That scotch was $180 per glass, and his tip was getting bigger by the second. Outstanding. I'll put that in immediately. Across the restaurant, I could see my family at their table. Jessica was gesturing urgently. My father had his phone out, probably trying to call me. David, Jessica's husband who'd been silent this entire time, looked uncomfortable, like he was realizing he'd just witnessed something that couldn't be smoothed over with money or social niceties. My phone buzzed. Dad calling. I declined it. Let it go to voicemail. Another buzz. Text from Jessica. You're being childish. This is ridiculous. Come back to the table. I typed back, no thanks. My son and I are fine right here. Sent. Blocked her number. The appetizers arrived. 3 massive crab cakes garnished with microgreens and aioli, plated like art. Caleb stared at them like they were treasure. Is this real crab? He whispered. King crab. From Alaska. Try it. He took a careful bite, eyes widening. Dad, this is so good. I know, buddy. You deserve good things. The steaks came 20 minutes later. 40-ounce tomahawk cuts on plates so big they required special presentation, still sizzling, perfectly marbled, cooked to medium rare exactly as requested. Caleb gasped when he saw the size. The steak was literally bigger than his head, bone protruding like something from a cartoon. I can't eat all of this, he said, laughing. That's okay. Eat what you want. We'll take the rest home. It'll be lunch for a week. I cut into my own steak, the knife sliding through butter-tender meat, and savored that first bite. $800 dinner for 2, worth every penny to see my son's face. And for dessert? The waiter asked when he came to check on us.